Pleasure to be here, and thank you for your time. As somebody who stood up as an assemblyman over on the other side of the county, in between that great divide that hopefully we'll eliminate one day, I was a huge critic of Albany, and I stand before you today to tell you that really this state is finally moving in the right direction. If you think of what has been accomplished, I never thought that Washington, D.C. could possibly make Albany look good. I didn't think much could make Albany look good. That's exactly what's happening. I mean, if you think about the bipartisan effort that has happened in Albany, you have a Democratic governor, entirely capable governor, moving the ball forward. How he's been able to keep Shelley Silver in the assembly in line, I don't know, but whatever he's doing, I like it. And he has a very good relationship with our majority, Republican majority, in the Senate. The budget was balanced, and I know for all you consider that your job. Pass it on time, balance it. In Albany, the land that common sense tends to forget again and again and again, we have not always passed a balanced budget, and we certainly, not we, but the legislature has not passed a budget on time in a very long time. So the fact that the budget was balanced, that it was bipartisan, and the budget this year actually cut spending by 2%. So we had a governor previous to this governor, actually two previous to this governor, in Eliot Spitzer, who said everything's going to change on day one. But then if you remember, the budget that was passed under his first administration increased spending, increased taxes, more than any other time in New York State history. And he said, well, look, you can't turn New York State government overnight. It's like a battleship. This governor, working with our Senate majority, we've been able to cut back the tide. And once again, 2% at the local level may not sound like a lot. But in Albany, where spending was literally increasing at 8 and 10% or more compounded annually, it's a really big deal, especially considering the reality that there's no backdoor borrowing, which is a little Albany gimmick, and there were no tax increases whatsoever. So a good deal of accomplishment. On the property tax cap, is the property tax, now, I mean, I've been running on the property tax cap as an issue that's important to me, to my constituency now for 5 years. And is this property tax cap perfect? It is absolutely not perfect. And to the extent we've had conference calls on it, you've been extremely aggressive in those conference calls and have brought a lot to the table in those conversations. This property tax cap certainly has flaws, and those can be fixed. I'm asking that I hear from each and every one of you on this property tax cap and how it can be better. There are certain safety valves that were put in place for school districts, whether it be capital expenditures or otherwise, that were not put in place for the municipalities. We're going to have to go back and take a look at this. But we all know it. No matter where you live, you know, the school tax nightmare really is something that just used to affect our area, but now affects all of New York State, from Niagara down to our area to the very tip of Long Island. We have seniors being taxed out of their homes. It's horrific to think that seniors 75, 80 years of age, they built the community. They really are the silver backbone, the lining that keeps the community going when everybody else is at work. People my age are living in their parents' basement. They don't like mold. They got to live there because they can't afford to live on the outside. And working families at the end of the day, they say, well, okay, I'll pay the 10, the 12, the 15,000 because my kids don't have to go to private school. But then they make a deal with the devil because as soon as those kids graduate, they're out of here. So the school tax crisis is destroying our region in a lot of ways. It's ripping the community apart. So is this perfect? No. We've got to work together with municipalities, school districts to fix it. But over time, and people say, Greg, I do not need a tax cap. I need a tax cut. I got you. I got that. But this will do more to bring everything into line over the next 5, 6, 7 years. Massachusetts, not to drill down too much into detail, they passed Proposition 2.5. There were problems with Proposition 2.5, and it happened in a better economy than what we're in. They went back and they fixed those. But Massachusetts, they called it Taxachusetts because it was #1 in overall taxation in the United States of America. They're now near 27, 28, 29 in overall taxation, and their school rankings have actually gone up. So is this going to hurt a little? Is it going to force a conversation? Yes. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. And will it help people over time? It certainly will. On unfunded mandate relief, did we do enough? We did not do enough. We did not do near enough. My conference, we fought for about $280 million in unfunded mandate relief. The Assembly wanted about $30 in unfunded mandate relief, and they even couldn't agree on that. That's a joke. It wasn't exactly 30, but it was less than 100 million. We got $130 million approximately in unfunded mandate relief. I think the Mahopac School District is $110, $120 million, so, you know, the entire budget. So this is not a big number for the entire state. We get that. But these two boards, the tax cap and the unfunded mandate, just so you understand the politics of it, the tax cap is forcing the issue of unfunded mandate relief. I never thought that outside of rooms like this, I never thought that when I'm out on the parade route, that I would have rank and file taxpayers and voters come up to me and say, Greg, you have to do something about unfunded mandate relief. I mean, the fact that unfunded mandate is even part of the general lexicon right now tells you where we have moved as an electorate, how informed many people are, even compared to 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. That tax cap is now forcing this as an issue because all of you, many of you are saying, Greg, what the hell are you doing? You're capping our ability to manage ourselves. We've been making the tough decisions for a long time, and now you're heaping all these unfunded mandates on us. That waterfall of unfunded mandates would have continued, in my opinion, were it not for the tax cap. So all new unfunded mandates, hopefully they will not, there will be no new ones, and now we're retroactively going back to address the ones in the past. That's a good thing, a very good thing. You know, this year the governor had a few priorities. Number one was the property tax cap, outside of balancing the budget and getting that done. Property tax cap, ethics reform, and marriage equality. The MTA payroll tax, the repeal, I've been fighting for a forensic accounting of the MTA. I want a full repeal of the MTA payroll tax. This represents cruel and unusual punishment to everybody in this room. You're paying it whether you know it or not, 5, 16, 17, 100 times because of the way that this is being instituted. Municipalities have to pay it, school districts have to pay it, not-for-profits have to pay it. The Girl Scouts, who do not pay any tax like this, are now paying this. Devereaux School, which helps children with autism, they're paying this tax. Park, which helps children with special needs, they're paying $50,000 a year approximately to the MTA, which, by the way, is not completely, but rife with corruption, a completely inappropriate use of a lot of funds. We're talking about cost overruns 200-300%. And Park is a good example. They're cutting a $50,000 check. That's 2 people that could be helping children with special needs. We've got to get rid of this thing. The problem with engaging revenue streams, new revenue streams, is that this now represents $1.5 billion in about an $11 billion budget for the MTA. So we need to get rid of it, but then we have to find a way to fill that hole through the MTA. Forcing a forensic accounting will be part of it. I've introduced a bill for a phased repeal of the MTA payroll tax. I've spoken with the governor, spoken with my conference, majority members in the assembly. I believe that we will see the first phase of a repeal of this. It starts with employers of 25 and below. That includes municipalities. It pulls in school districts. And over time, it will save about $841 to $2 million. On the Reforming Albany front, you know, I'll say another thing on the marriage equality issue. No matter where you stand on that issue, it really marks a new day. And I am extremely capable of making sure that I upset both people on the left and on the right, which is fine. But you know, on this point, people have got to understand something that changed. On that issue, when you talk about democracy, it would have been very easy for our conference, or in Old Albany, what would have happened is you would have 4 to 5 members stand up and say, we do not want that bill on the floor. Democracy is not going to happen, and kill the bill. And or have dysfunction take over. Even when the Dems were in control of the Senate, they could not pass the bill. Okay, so it's not even about Republican versus Democrat, but the ability for this bill to come up, regardless of where you stand, and have an up or down vote, democracy happened. And that's what democracy is all about. And you should be able to have bills come up in a legislative forum for a yes or no vote, and some fail, some win, and some pass. I mean, but Albany used to be 99.9% of the bills were already predetermined by either the majority leader or the speaker, and it was already known when that bill hit the floor whether it was going to pass or not. And if they didn't want a bill to come up because there was a small minority in that conference, they would kill it. So for people who are looking from a government perspective, no matter where you stand, it really is a new day in Albany that was even allowed to function, and democracy was even allowed to function in that sense. On ethics reform, we know all too well in this district, there are certain individuals in public office who have turned shifting around large sums of money into a professional sport, whether it be through their law firm or through a not-for-profit. It happens. And the good news is that some of these people are going to jail. That means that the system is working, but we also have to correct it. And we passed an ethics reform package that closed a lot of the loopholes that used to allow legislators to drive through with a Mack truck and increase disclosure requirements for a whole host of professional services that used to be disclosed. So you used to be able to hide your clients. Whereas you can find out that my grandmother 5 years ago gave me a $100 donation by going on the campaign finance website of the New York State Board of Elections. Yet if I had a contracting firm, what you couldn't see is the $50,000 that somebody gave me, a local developer, a few weeks before a very important vote. That's what was lacking. And the good government groups and the media and everybody wanted to focus on the $100 that my grandmother was giving me, but they weren't focusing on the $50,000 transfers going through private enterprises. And finally, that spotlight has been put on this. Also, I know you shouldn't have taken this long to do it, but if you've been convicted of a felony and you're a public official, you're not going to get your pension. That's a good thing. It's ridiculous it took this long to pass, but it passed. Next. It's my honor to be the chairman of Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, Military Naval Affairs. And I'm sure you heard about the hearings that we held down in New York City, received chocolate, roses, a couple death threats, but they're extremely vital and important hearings that we held. Nearly 10 years after 9/11, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, we are not secure. As New Yorkers, we are not where we need to be to protect our soft underbelly. We have a federal Department of Homeland Security that is being used as a pork purveyor of projects in states and cities at much less security risk. The Republicans down in Congress just a couple months ago walked into the room with an axe and a chainsaw, and they were looking to cut hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, including $186 million in funding to New York State. I stood up with this governor, I stood up with Mayor Bloomberg, God bless Chairman Peter King, who's been a great chairman of Homeland Security, and we made sure that that money was not touched. But as New Yorkers, we're in that strike zone. And outside of Jerusalem, New York City is terrorist target number one. And it's our first responders who are going to be responding and did respond to the call in the past. We've got to take that very seriously. As chairman, I went down to the Port Authority bus terminal. I went with Eyewitness News. We had some whistleblowers, God bless them, that alerted us to it. We went under the Port Authority bus terminal, and we drove by guard shacks that were completely empty, constructed in the aftermath of 9/11. Port Authority bus terminal being one of the busiest bus terminals in the world, the busiest in the United States of America. We could have driven, we could have all went down, rented 20 buses, packed it with whatever you want to pack it with, drove in and out. We went up and down lanes, up in the wrong way. We should have been pulled over 50 times and got out of there. We exposed that in the aftermath of that, and the Port Authority is a very tough institution to embarrass. There are now men and women uniformed under the Port Authority bus terminal. JFK Air Train goes right under El Al. There should be screenings of packages and people getting on JFK Air Train. El Al goes back and forth to Tel Aviv, to Israel every single day. Huge terrorist target. El Al Airlines, God bless, does an amazing job of securing their area. The air train going under them was basically a taxpayer-funded delivery vehicle with a red carpet welcoming anybody who wanted to strike at that terminal. 99% of the time we exposed, totally unmanned. Absolutely ridiculous. So there's a lot that needs to be worked on. If there's anything that keeps me up at night, it is certainly this responsibility. Radio interoperability. I don't know if you remember the 9/11 Commission, but on 9/11, people had radios, they couldn't communicate with each other. Men and women died because of that. We had a gentleman from the Port Authority who showed up, and he said he might as well have a brick on his side, that his radio does not work to this day, 10 years later. And there was a statewide interoperability push. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars, about 100, I think it's $180 million or more, and total boondoggle, and we still don't have that interoperability. So we're on top of this. On Veterans Affairs issues, we're doing a Hudson Valley Hall of Honor for a veteran. I ask that you find a veteran of distinction, nominate them to this or her, and then they will be nominated for the statewide award. A couple things we did this year. Number one, bipartisan support. Passed I don't know if you heard about Westboro Baptist Church, but they use the funerals of our active duty service personnel to propel their extreme social views. Really disgusting stuff. And we in New York State moved forward with 2 bills through my committee to limit their ability to protest. You're allowed freedom of speech, but there are smart ways that we're able to limit it. Not the freedom of speech, but to limit their ability to impede on the memories, the cherished memories of these active duty servicemen and women. The MTA laid off a couple guys that were working for the MTA that were deployed. It's a huge issue just throughout. We passed a bill to protect those soldiers. We secured $500,000 for a statewide veteran cemetery program. Everywhere I go, I talk about this again and again and again. It's extremely important, and we really need everybody in the community to rally upon this opportunity. The federal government has a very generous federal program that pays for the construction of a statewide veteran cemetery. We only have two that I know of. There's not statewide, but federal, one in Long Island and one in Saratoga. Once you get outside that 75-mile radius, people are much less likely to take advantage of the cemetery or even visit their deceased family members. We have 99,000, West Point's right over the river, okay? We have 99,000 underserved veterans in this exact region. The federal government pays for everything. The state has to put up 10%, which I got secured in the budget, which was not an easy thing this year. And then the state is on the hook for perpetual maintenance. Putnam County moved forward and said that they would be willing to pay for the perpetual maintenance, but at the end of the day, it's a contract between the state and the federal government. There's been some misreporting on this, and that's okay because that happens all the time, especially when it's associated with me. But it's not okay to attack this program because this program is vital. And we have got to build a veteran cemetery in Putnam County. We just have to do that, and we're going to get it done. Go. One other just real quick issue. They were going to cut about $10 million from our state veterans hospitals. Literally until the last day of the budget process, it was a fight to get that money put back in. We got, I think, either less than or more than $10 million. And it was about $1.5 million that we got restored to Montrose. And that was a very tough fight, but we got that done. On women's issues, I have an advisory council on women's issues, and I ask that anybody out there in TV land or anybody in the audience or anybody on the board who's interested in being involved with this, we're starting to actually get, it's kind of moved. I mean, we got very active on one side of the issues, but now it's moving more towards the child care issues, which is a huge issue for working families, the expense incurred by child care, and trying to work with the organizations that work with the blue-collar working families. We all know women who as part of a young family or on their own, that it actually makes more sense to stay home because of the expense of child care. We got to work as, if there are certain things, I believe in limited government, there's certain things that government should do, and helping working families and young moms compete with these costs, and especially in this environment, we got to provide that safety net. And by the way, it's these organizations that are helping women with child care and young families with child care that are getting cut right now. So we're working to find the funding. We were also able to find $50,000, and it may not sound like a lot, but it was our top member item to go towards my sister's place, a better women's shelter. Also passed a piece of legislation to expand the role of the Women's Veterans Coordinator, and a couple issues on that we're working on. One specifically, women are called to duty. If they're in a custody fight, or even if they're not in a custody fight, many times their spouse can take advantage, for lack of better terminology, of the fact that here's an individual called up to service, they go serve their country, and they come back and they find out that they can't get their children back, or they've lost those custody rights. So we're very aggressively working with the federal government to address that proactively and to have very special carve-outs in the law for these brave women who are called up for service to the country. I was like 5 pounds thinner there, huh? Yeah, not bad. Okay, this is animal rights. This is Hannah. I do not pay her to sit with me in photos. That is my dog. She is beautiful. She is loyal. She matches everything I wear, and she's the love of my life. We had an animal advocacy day in Albany. I co-hosted it with my favorite wild and furry assemblyman, Jim Tedesco. Thank God he's not watching. And we passed legislation to make it a crime to profit from dogfighting, and I'm pushing a bill called Charlemagne's Law to get rid of these horrific puppy mills. So I want to thank you for your time. I open it up to questions. I know there's an awful lot more that we've accomplished, but time is limited.